Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the game preview, Aston Villa versus Everton in the third round of the Carabao Cup. Tomorrow evening, late kickoff tomorrow evening of course, midweek game at Villa Park. Hopefully the result and the performance is nothing like the result and performance of our last trip to Villa Park a couple of weeks ago. Everton coming up against a really good Aston Villa side, an Aston Villa side who currently sits sixth in the Premier League table. 6 games played, 4 wins and only the 2 defeats. Of course, Unai Emery's team comfortably dispatched of Everton when they visited Villa Park in the Premier League a couple of weeks ago. However, this will without a doubt be a different game. I don't expect the same outcome as on that day. I'm not saying I expect Everton to turn up and win, by the way, because as I said, Aston Villa are a very, very good side, got some really, really good players in there, and even if they do play, their second string team or maybe some players that don't get much game time in the Premier League, they've still got a massive amount of quality in there within that squad that are more than capable of turning up, on any given day and putting a performance in, especially at home. It's down to Sean Dyche and it's down to this Everton team to not allow Aston Villa to do what they did to us a number of weeks ago. And some people will say, well, we can't help that because Aston Villa are just a much, much better team than Everton. Aston Villa probably are a better team than Everton, but they're not that much better than us to warrant the performance that Everton put in at Villa Park earlier on in the season. Ultimately, there will be changes from both sides going into this game. It, of course, is a Carabao Cup third round fixture. I believe Aston Villa have been knocked out the last 2 seasons by a Premier League side in the third round of the Carabao Cup. However, Everton have also been knocked out, I think, 5 out the last 6 seasons in the third round of the Carabao Cup or something like that. So, or certainly the last couple of seasons on the bounce we have. So it will be, a difficult game. I remember when the draw was made for this game, I remember sitting here after watching Everton barely beat, Doncaster Rovers, a Doncaster Rovers side that were rock bottom of League 2 at the time. So rock bottom of the entire football league sort of pyramid in this country, and it took Everton a comeback in the second half to be able to get through that game. So when the draw was made at the end of that game, that we would be facing Aston Villa away from home, I was not very confident, to say the least. It wasn't particularly a game I was looking forward to. And now that it's come by, am I more confident now than I was when the draw was originally made 2 or 3 weeks ago? Well, yes, I probably am, based upon not much other than the fact that Everton are coming off the back of our first win of the season. Now, it has to be said, Aston Villa are also coming off the back of a fantastic win for them against Chelsea last time out at Stamford Bridge. An absolutely massive, massive win for them. They did lose in the midweek before that in the Europa Conference League, but of course beating Crystal Palace in the Premier League the week before that. Their performance against Liverpool at Anfield wasn't the best. However, there isn't many teams that will go to Anfield and put in a particularly good performance this season, so I don't think we can judge them too much based upon that. Look, we know what Aston Villa are. Aston Villa are a very good side. They're managed by a very good manager, and ultimately a team with a lot of quality there and a team with a lot of talent within their squad and a manager with a lot of talent as well. A manager that, is used to winning trophies, is used to success, is used to managing a football clubs where, winning European trophies, not just domestic trophies, is almost an expectation. So, this ultimately will be a massively difficult game for Sean Dyche and for Everton tomorrow. The big sort of confidence pointer for me going into this one, and by the way, I'm not particularly confident going into this. I'm just slightly more confident now than I was 3 weeks ago when the draw was made, and I suppose that's because, Everton did look so good against Brentford, and it was a much better performance than any performance we've seen over the last few weeks or so. We got our first win of the season. It was away from home. We looked cool. We looked calm. We looked comfortable in that game, but that's not to say that this game tomorrow night will be anything like that. The reality is both sides will make a lot of changes. Aston Villa have got a massive squad. I'm sure we'll see the likes of Duran, who I think scored his first Aston Villa goal against Everton early on in the season. We haven't seen an awful lot of him so far. We know they've got the likes of Emiliano Martinez, Moussa Diaby, Pau Torres, Ollie Watkins, Douglas Luiz, Leon Bailey, John McGinn. They've got Yuri Tielemans, who'll probably play tomorrow. He hasn't had much game time this season. Obviously joined from Leicester on a free in the summer. Jacob Ramsey, who is somebody that I massively rate as well. I'm sure he'll get game time for them tomorrow. So they've got a number of extremely talented players, Aston Villa, that, ultimately are capable of hitting Everton. Have got a much, much better squad than Everton, and they've got a better starting 11 than Everton as well. I mean, you look at some of their fringe players, Emi Buendia, Bertrand Sayore, Boubacar Kamara. These are players that, are getting that side, but aren't necessarily absolute nailed on starters week in, week out, and these are players that you feel if they'd play for Everton, then they'd be in this team week in, week out. So it will be a massively difficult game for Everton tomorrow. Obviously, as I said, it will be a different type of game to the one earlier on in the season. For one reason being that we're later on in the season, even though we're only a few weeks later, we're later on in the season. Fitness is obviously at a different level. Teams have played a lot more football than what they had done, in the opening couple of weeks. So I expect a different type of performance from Everton. I expect a different flow in the game. Whether or not it is a different result than that one at Villa Park a number of weeks ago, we ultimately will wait and see. And whilst I do think Unai Emery will make changes to that Aston Villa side, I still think that even with changes made to it, it ultimately is, as I said, a squad full of players with quality, full of players with ability, and maybe they can afford to make a couple of changes and not really see too much of a drop-off in performance. Everton, on the other hand, in that position, we have not got that luxury. We maybe can afford to get away with one or two substitutions or one or two changes in personnel, but anything more, you start to get into the territory of really weakening your starting 11 and ultimately putting players in there that just simply aren't good enough to play. Okay, if we were facing a League 1 side or a League 2 side, then maybe there is a number of names you could throw in this starting 11 with the expectation that they'd be good enough to win that game. But as the Doncaster performance showed, we made a number of changes in that game, and we were having to bring on a centre-forward that had only been at the football club 24 hours in order to win us that game, because those players that were given their opportunity just simply were not good enough. And, we're now playing a European side, the side that have had a fantastic last 12 months in the Premier League, and I assume, and I would like to hope, that the manager will pick a relatively strong side to be able to go out there and compete in this game. Little bit of a mad feeling going into this one for me. As we said yesterday when we done the review to the that Brentford win, for me, the absolute necessity and the absolute focus has got to be on winning the next two Premier League games at Goodison Park. We've got Luton and we've got Bournemouth at Goodison Park. Two games that ultimately we really need to win. Two massively, massively important games, and there is a decision to be made based on this game. Sorry, the decision to be made for this game tomorrow based on those two games coming up. Does Sean Dyche put maybe a Yusuf Chimiti in the starting 11 and give Beto and Dominic Calvert-Lewin a rest, given that we've got two massively winnable home games coming up in the Premier League that we ultimately need to take 6 points from? Again, I know some people will say, oh yeah, but how often do Everton take 6 points, from 2 consecutive games? I'm not asked. We absolutely have to take 6 points from Luton and Bournemouth. It's as simple as that. Or does he go strong tomorrow, still play a decently strong side, and hope that nobody gets injured, and hope that we can put up a fight tomorrow, maybe come away with the results, and then obviously go into that Luton game with obviously everybody fit and available? I suppose we will wait until tomorrow to find the answer to that question out. For me personally, as I said, this one is very, very difficult, because I say this every year and I will continue to say it. Everton Football Club simply aren't in the position to throw away the cup competitions. We simply aren't. Everton Football Club have not won a trophy for 28 years this year. We are not a football club that is in a position to just throw away an opportunity in the Carabao Cup. Now, how likely is it that we will win the Carabao Cup? Extremely unlikely, because the last few seasons it's been won by the top 4 sides. Manchester City absolutely dominated it for about 4 or 5 years, and in the last couple of seasons we've seen Liverpool win it, we've seen Man United win it, we've seen teams like Chelsea in the final, Manchester City in the final. So ultimately this is an extremely difficult competition to win, as is the FA Cup. But as a team that haven't won a trophy for 28 years, which is an absolute disgrace, by the way, and still nobody is being held accountable for that, we are not in a position to just say, do you know what, we're not really bothered about the cup competition, forget it, we'll just play a load of kids and we don't really care if we go out. We're not in that position to do that. It's as simple as that. However, we are also in a position where these next 2 home games in the Premier League are so pivotal, so pivotal, and we absolutely need to win the both of them. Regardless of the Brentford result, and the Brentford result was absolutely fantastic, and it was massive, and it was a brilliant win, and one that we were all buzzing about, and I'm sure we all are still buzzing about to this day. But regardless of that, Everton simply have to win the next 2 Premier League games. Luton and Bournemouth at Goodison Park, and if not, then the manager is under the exact same amount of pressure as he was before the win against Brentford. So there is a decision to be made. Everton haven't got a strong enough squad to be able to put a good enough team out tomorrow to go and compete against Aston Villa, and then put another good enough team out on Saturday to beat Luton, and it be, and both teams consist of different players. We haven't got a strong enough squad to do that. If we make changes tomorrow, then it's more than likely we will lose this game, because ultimately, as I said, the Doncaster performance is a fine example of that. The fringe players in our team and maybe the fringe players in our squad just simply aren't good enough. Certainly not good enough to compete with a team that are playing in Europe at the moment and are doing really well in the Premier League. However, our first team might be good enough to compete with Aston Villa. And in fact, I think our first team is good enough to compete with Aston Villa, but then you run the risk of, somebody picking up a knock, or somebody not being fit enough to play on Saturday against Luton in what is another hugely important game of football. For me, I'll be brutally honest, I see this game in a very simple manner. I think Everton should go strong tomorrow. I don't think Everton should go weak, because I think, again, for a football club that haven't won a trophy for as long as we haven't, to turn up to a Premier League football club away from home, and not only that, a good Premier League football club away from home, and play fringe players or players that maybe you don't deem good enough. I'm talking a Michael Keane, I'm talking maybe a Yusuf Chamiti at this moment, I'm talking maybe, maybe Lewis Dobbin, players that aren't ready or just simply aren't good enough, and then you lose 4 or 5-0, and ultimately we're all sitting here at the end of it saying we haven't won a trophy in 28 years, and the manager's throwing away opportunities like that. The way I see this is, I think Everton should go strong, I think the manager should go strong, and if we lose this game, I will be disappointed, I will be upset, I will be frustrated, I will be angry, as I am every time Everton lose a game of football, regardless of what it is. But I will understand that it's not the end of the world, and I will understand that the next 2 Premier League games are by far bigger than this game tomorrow. And I said that the other day, and I will stick by it, and I know some people won't like it, and I know some people will have their difference in opinions, and some people might call me an idiot for thinking like this, but the way I see it is very simple. If you were to say to me now, Cam, you can either beat Aston Villa and progress into the next round of the Carabao Cup, where you might get Man United away, or Liverpool away, or City away, a game that you'll likely lose, or you can lose to Villa, but you beat Villa and you get through to the next round, where you might get a top 4 side away, but then you will lose to Luton and Bournemouth, or you lose tomorrow, but you're guaranteed to beat Luton and Bournemouth at Goodison Park over the next 2 weeks. I'm sorry, but and I really want to put that to you all, and I know that's a bit of a difficult question because I'm asking you to choose Everton losing in one of the scenarios, but let me ask you all that. What would you choose? What would you choose? Would you choose Everton winning tomorrow and losing the next 2 Premier League games, or losing tomorrow and winning the next 2 Premier League games? Because for me, I'm sorry if it upsets people, but I'd choose losing tomorrow and winning the next 2 Premier League games, because I have said this before, and I will say it again, I cannot go through what we have been through the last 2 seasons on the spin. I just can't do it. I can't go through another relegation battle in May. I can't go through another 2 months of sleepless nights and headaches and worry and anxiety and stress and all of that sort of stuff. We're not likely to win the Carabao Cup anyway, and I'm not saying that in a defeatist way and saying that we shouldn't even bother turning up and having a go tomorrow, because we absolutely should bother turning up and having a go, because we might just win tomorrow and then we might just get a lucky run up until the final. But those Premier League games, it's imperative we win both of them. Now, obviously, as David says, in an ideal world, we win all 3 games. But that would be extremely difficult to expect Everton to win 3 games within the space of 10 days, given the weakness of our squad at the moment, and the lack of strength in our squad. I do think the manager will make changes tomorrow, but I do think he will keep a relatively strong team because we're going away to a Premier League side. But ultimately, as I said, this game is come at a real wrong time for me. A real wrong time for 2 reasons. One of them, because it's come on a Wednesday after Everton have won an away game, which means that instead of 7 days of happiness and joy and excitement we get out of winning a game of footy, we only really get 3 days because we play again on Wednesday. But secondly, because that win against Brentford was huge. It was huge. We'd gone to a team that, were a really well-run side, really well-coached side, brilliant manager, some really good players, and we'd managed to beat them convincingly. That would have been a fantastic platform to go off, turning up to play Luton at Goodison, and then Bournemouth at Goodison. We would have had all of that confidence from the Brentford game, and then we could have gone into those 2 games, very winnable games, with the confidence and with the belief in ourselves to go and win them. Now we've got this one sort of wedged in between, and a loss could mean a lack of confidence again. A win might mean we've had to sacrifice playing a couple of, strong players, a Garner Gay, etc., who then won't be able to play on Saturday against Luton. So it's a difficult circumstance, but the reality of the situation is it's football, and you want to win every game. As a football fan, and the manager should want to win every game, and the players should want to win every game, and I want to win this tomorrow. If I was forced to make a decision, then I think the next 2 Premier League games are more important than this one. I do, because, if this was a final, then it's a completely different question. The reality is it isn't, and the reality is if we win tomorrow, we still could come up against Manchester City away or Liverpool away in one of the next rounds, and that obviously would be extremely difficult for us. However, that doesn't mean I don't want to win tomorrow, and that doesn't mean Everton shouldn't set out to win. I absolutely want to win tomorrow, of course I do, and I think a win tomorrow would be absolutely huge for Everton. Imagine if we won tomorrow. If we won tomorrow, it would be huge. And Villa will make changes as well. This won't be the same Villa team that we played a few weeks ago. It'll be a Villa team that will be changed. Of course it will be, because ultimately, they've got 3 competitions to think about, 4 competitions to think about when the FA Cup comes. You've got to, they've got to do well in the Premier League. Ultimately, to improve on their season last season, they'll want to do well in Europe, and they'll see themselves as a club with a real opportunity to win that trophy, given Unai Emery's rich heritage in winning European competitions. They'll want to do well in both of the cup competitions as well. I'd say that the Carabao Cup might even be the least of their priorities, and maybe, I'm not saying this will happen by the way, but maybe we're in a situation where Unai Emery will look at this game tomorrow and go, do you know what? I'm not even that bothered about that. I want to do well in the Premier League. We've lost our opening European game, so I want to get back on track there. So just throw a few kids out there, a few fringe players, and see what happens. And maybe there's an opportunity there for Everton to take advantage of that. In terms of team news for me, as I said, I would go relatively strong. I would. I don't agree with the Blues saying let the kids lose to Villa, because I just, as much as you might say, well, let the kids go in and lose and then the first team will be confident going into Luton because they're in winning form, I don't think it works like that. I think if we lose heavy tomorrow, regardless of whether it's the kids or the first team, I think it'd knock confidence. I think it would knock the feeling amongst the fan base, and I think it would add a lot of unnecessary pressure on Saturday's game. Don't get me wrong, Everton could turn up tomorrow and lose, but we could lose by putting in a decent performance, battling, working hard, fighting, and we might be unlucky to lose the game, and then we'll all sit back and go, unlucky that we've lost it, disappointing that we're out, but you know what, it's not too heartbreaking. Whereas if Everton go and lose 5-0 tomorrow, regardless of whether it's the kids or the first team, we'll all be gutted, and the pressure mounting on the manager and the players will increase going into Saturday. For me, I'd go with Jordan Pickford in goal. I think that's very, very basic. Again, you might say that's unfortunate for João Virginia, and maybe the manager will go with João Virginia just to give him a little bit of game time. But for me, I don't see any reason why Jordan needs taken out. I would go with Vitaly Mykolenko at left back. Ultimately, I think he's done really, really well in the last couple of games. I don't think he particularly needs a rest. I think if anybody in that back line needs a rest, it's Ashley Young. So I'd go with Mykolenko left back. I'd go with Branthwaite and Godfrey at centre back. I wouldn't have Michael Keane anywhere near this team, regardless. Even if we want to go weak, and even if Dyche was to sit down with us now and say, I don't even care about this game, I'm not asked if we lose, I still wouldn't have Michael Keane anywhere near the team. I got Branthwaite and Godfrey, as I said, Branthwaite because ultimately he's doing really well at the moment. Again, he's young, he's fit, he doesn't need a rest, he doesn't need taking out the team. Whereas Tarkhouse, he does need taking out the team, for a little bit of a rest. And I'd go with Godfrey next to him because he's probably the only option. I'd go with Patterson next to him as well. On the right hand side, I think he'll come in for Ashley Young, give Ashley Young a rest. I think we'll see James Garner and Onana in the middle of the park. I think Garner Gay will come out. Still a relatively strong midfield. I think Garner Gay will come out and be given a rest as he was against Doncaster. I think we will see now who plays behind the striker. Do you know what you might see? You might see Decore taken out and given a rest. Danjuma behind the striker. Harrison one side, McNeil the other side, and then Beto up front. Or Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front. I know some people will say, oh, don't throw Dom in because you're risking him getting an injury and then he'll be out for the foreseeable future. I get that. But, again, you could have that conversation when it comes to every game with Dominic Calvert-Lewin, can't you? So, I think we might see that. I think we might see Jack Harrison for the first time tomorrow, which would be absolutely fantastic. Definitely on the bench in some form, if not starting. And as I said, I think we will go relatively strong. I do think there'll be a couple of changes, and I do think there'll be a couple of players taken out to be able to be rested for those players that are physically incapable of playing 2 games in a week. But I think everybody that is physically capable of playing 2 games in a week, your Onanas, your Branthwaite, your Mykolenkos, your Danjumas, I think you'll see them all tomorrow evening, and that for me would be the right way to go about it. Ultimately, as I said, in an ideal situation, we win all 3 of these games coming up, but that will be extremely difficult to do. And all as I know, for me, in my opinion, is Everton have to win those 2 Premier League games, otherwise the manager will come under pressure, and rightly so, because those are 2 extremely winnable games at home, and we've already lost 2 extremely winnable games at home, so we can't afford to lose any other. We can't afford to drop points in any other winnable game at home. Obviously, I want us to go and win tomorrow as well, but we'll ultimately we'll wait and see. The Blues says Onana came off against Brentford injured. Cam, did he? I don't remember Amadou Onana coming off injured against Brentford. I'll be honest, he might have come off. I seem to remember him coming off, but I don't seem to remember him having an injury particularly. Well, again, we've not heard much about that in the week, so I'm going to assume that that's nothing too serious. If it is, I'm sure we'll find out that tomorrow. But yeah, again, if he is out injured, then he will obviously come out, and maybe Decore will be forced to play because of that. But look, again, I don't want to seem defeatist. I don't want to seem negative. I want Everton to go and win tomorrow like everybody else does. And I hope Everton can go and do that. However, we've got a couple of really important Premier League games coming up that we must win. Regardless of what happens tomorrow, we must win those 2 upcoming Premier League games. So we'll wait and see what happens. I do think the manager will go strong, and I do think Unai Emery will go weaker than he did in the Premier League. And maybe that will balance out a little bit, and maybe that will mean Everton can put up a better fight. One thing I do think will happen is I think this will be a much, much tighter game than it was in August, and I think you will see much more competition in the game as well. So we'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens. Hopefully Everton can come away with the win. It would be fantastic if we could, and it would be brilliant for the confidence and obviously the mentality going into those 2 games. But we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do leave a like. It only takes a second. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe as well. That would mean a huge, huge amount to me. Big thank you all for watching. We'll be back with the instant match reaction and the player ratings tomorrow, of course, so don't forget to look out for those. But big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you later.